Good afternoon, John Fisher, here for, I think, our fifth video now. And today we're going to look at somebody called Carlo Acutis. So you should see that there. Somebody pointed out, one of the teachers, that all these stories are a bit sad, really, because the people die quite young. And I'm sorry about that. It's a good point, especially on a Friday afternoon. So I'll have to try and relook at my list, because I think all these young saints have died young in quite sad circumstances. But anyway, we'll continue for now. So we're looking at Carlo Acutis. You may have heard of him. He was recently beatified, and so he's quite a popular saint at the moment. So let's get this to work. So Carlo Acutis was born in London, 1991, to fairly wealthy Italian parents who weren't very religious, particularly. When he was just 4 months old, his family moved back to Italy, to Milan, so that's where he grew up. His interests were, among other things, PlayStation, and he liked animals. He also liked football, action films, and he, in fact, had 4 dogs and 2 cats and many goldfish. So quite a normal kid, really. And then sort of out of nowhere, his religious faith, he was a Catholic, suddenly explodes. And he really develops a great love for God and for Jesus. So he used to ask his Polish babysitter a lot of questions from a young age about his Catholic faith. He was, for some reason, just very interested in it. And so much so that he asked for his first Holy Communion early. So normally you have it when you're aged 8, 9, 10. He asked for it as soon as he could when he was 7 years old. And if you read any article, biography about Carlo Acutis, you'll very quickly become aware that one of his great devotions and love was the Eucharist. So here you can see in the Catholic faith, we believe that the Eucharist, so the host, you can see the priest holding the host there, looks like bread, but is in fact changed in the Mass to become Jesus, truly present with his body and his blood. And you can see that, for example, in some images like this one here, which shows sort of Jesus in the broken host in the bread, because we believe that it truly becomes the body of Jesus. And this plays a key part in Carlo's life. So, for example, he would always go into a church to say hello to Jesus, because the host that you see here is usually reserved in a tabernacle in a church. So he would go into a church and have a little conversation with Jesus. And this had such a powerful effect on the people around him that his parents, for example, started coming back to church, because they realized that by going to church, they would receive Jesus in Holy Communion. And then he was very good at computer coding and making websites. So he actually made a website dedicated to all the Eucharistic miracles that have taken place. So sometimes the host, which you see here, there have been some miracles where it's turned into a piece of heart flesh or into blood, started bleeding. So 126 of these miracles have been approved. Some have been fakes, obviously, but 126 approved, and he started to collect these together and put them into a website, which still exists. Anyway, the effect of the Eucharist in Carlo's life is that even though he was very young, he started quickly doing quite amazing things for a young boy. So he had this idea that he had to fill his life doing good things. And his mum said, Carlo knew that he couldn't waste time. Every moment was used to do something good. So he'd spend a lot of time helping his friends, the elderly and the poor. When he played PlayStation, he would limit himself to just 1 hour a week, because he thought that's all he could allow himself to do. He wanted to spend the rest of his time helping friends and people who needed help. When, for example, he heard that parents of his friends were having marital problems, were maybe going to divorce, he would invite his friends and their parents around for supper. And by doing this, I think he's actually stopped a few of them from divorcing, because he managed to get them to sort out their difficulties. He used to stand up for his classmates who had disabilities when they were being bullied and insulted. He used to, for example, refrain from answering too many questions in class. So he was quite a clever kid, but he wouldn't always put his hand up to answer every question, even if he knew the answer, so that he would let others have a chance at answering the questions and not to show himself as being too clever. He used to get pocket money, but he would often save it and not spend any of it on himself, so that he could buy, for example, sleeping bags for the homeless. And when people wanted to give the homeless leftovers, he would say, no, let's not give them leftovers, let's buy them fresh food. So he was very inspired by St. Francis of Assisi, who had a great love for poor people, especially the homeless. And Carlo had that as well. So he always wanted to give, even not just give things to the poor, but give them the best things he could. When, for example, he went to buy an ice cream and he was given 20 cents too much change, he actually went back up the hill from which he'd come down to the ice cream shop and gave the 20 cents back to the shopkeeper. Obviously, he knew that 20 cents is nothing, doesn't really matter, but it was just a case for him of being honest, of being just, of not trying to do anything wrong, even if it's small. Unfortunately, as you might have guessed, the story does end a bit of a sad way in that he gets a sudden diagnosis. At the beginning of October 2006, he comes down with what the doctors thought was just a bad flu. Further investigations are done, and it turns out to be leukemia. And he used to cover up, not complain about his pain. So when he was in great pain, and they asked him, how much pain are you feeling? He would just say, there are people who are suffering much more than me. So he didn't want to draw attention to himself, didn't want to complain, just would get on with it. And he used to say, I offer up all my sufferings for the church and for the Pope and for other people. And so he accepted this diagnosis of a very aggressive leukemia. He in fact died after a few days of diagnosis, I believe. And he said, I die serenely because I have lived my life without wasting a minute on things which do not please God. So this sense of having a clear conscience, he'd always try to live his life using his life in the best way possible to help others. When, for example, a nurse was worried about his condition and wanted to wake his mother to tell her, he used to just say, oh, please don't wake her. She is very tired as well, and she will only worry even more. So even when he was ill, he was thinking about others. So that's just a very brief little sketch of some of the things that I think point out Carlo Acutis as being a very special person. Just to finish with this quote, he said, all are born as originals, but many die as photocopies. So he died fairly recently, really, 2006. He had this great sense that all of us are called to live our life in the best way possible. And by doing so, we won't just copy the rest. We won't just go with the flow, but we'll stand out as saints. And I do believe that Carlo will become a saint within a few years. So just a very quick video there about Carlo Acutis. Hope you find that inspirational. All the best for now. God bless and take care.